Well, hello everyone. My name is Mandy. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to those of you who have been here before. Today I am doing something I haven't done in a while and just sitting here talking about video games. As some of you may know, I've spent the last couple years on this channel, on my Twitch channel, playing a ton of Final Fantasy for the very first time, getting acquainted with that series. And as some of you may know, my knowledge of Final Fantasy initially comes from Kingdom Hearts, and that's how I got into gaming. That's how I started playing Final Fantasy. I initially adored Kingdom Hearts and used that as my window into Final Fantasy. Always was very curious about the Final Fantasy characters who made appearances in Kingdom Hearts, but never actually played Final Fantasy as a kid. Something held me back from it. I know what a few things are that held me back from it. For one thing, that it was turn-based at the time. I was just terrified of playing something turn-based. Or I thought it would be boring. I just thought it wouldn't be for me. It took me a long time to get over that and to actually play something that was turn-based for the first time. Ended up loving it so much. But yeah, that was a huge hurdle for me to start with. So in this video, I am going to be taking a look at a lot of the Final Fantasy elements that are in Kingdom Hearts and sharing with you everything I know about Final Fantasy that Kingdom Hearts has taught me. Let's get to it. All right. This first one's a pretty big one because this first one features a very important character to a lot of people in the Final Fantasy series, and that character is Aerith. Now, oh boy. What Kingdom Hearts taught me about Aerith. She's shy, she's reserved, she's innocent, she's boring. Absolutely no flavor to Aerith in Kingdom Hearts. Just the most uninspired character, honestly, to bring into Kingdom Hearts from Final Fantasy. They do not do Aerith any justice in Kingdom Hearts. I played Final Fantasy VII for the first time and expected so little from Aerith. I assumed that I wouldn't like her from the get-go. I knew so many people loved her, but I thought they loved her because she's this sweet little innocent girl who dies and she must be protected and you can't protect her and it's just this horrible, horrible fate that happens to her. That's not who she is though. That's not who she is in Final Fantasy VII at all. She is so far from that. She has this fun, spunky personality. She is sassy. She has an enormous personality and it is immediately in your face. She is not with you for the entire game. And you still pick up on her personality so quickly, so easily. She's a great character. And Kingdom Hearts kind of ruined that. She was not well represented in Kingdom Hearts. Not to mention her voice acting. Oh, some of the most wooden voice acting I've ever heard in Kingdom Hearts 2. I actually did enjoy her in Kingdom Hearts 1, the voice acting for her with Mandy Moore, although it still was this portrayal of this sweet, innocent girl. And I just thought, okay, here's a throwaway character in Final Fantasy VII who doesn't really contribute much to the plot and then dies. That's what I thought about Aerith when I started playing Final Fantasy VII. That she was just going to be kind of a damsel in distress, very sweet, very innocent. I mean, also like she's a flower girl. Like there are things that make me think that about her. But then when you actually meet her and get to know her, she's just not that at all. Thanks, Kingdom Hearts. Something I learned about Final Fantasy IX is, well, first of all, there aren't very many characters in it. We do not get a lot of Final Fantasy IX representation in Kingdom Hearts, despite, Final Fantasy IX had already come out when Kingdom Hearts came out. There is a character from Final Fantasy in Kingdom Hearts 2. That character is Vivi. What do I know about Vivi from Kingdom Hearts? Vivi is a Heartless? No idea that Vivi is a black mage. No idea. Now, you have to remember, this is coming from somebody who, as a kid, had never played a Final Fantasy game. Sorry about the sirens. Chicago. This is coming from somebody who's never played Final Fantasy, doesn't know what the classic black mage look is. But what I see is this person in this hat, this giant hat, giant robe, and like no face, but glowing eyes. Definitely a Heartless. In fact, I thought for so long that Vivi was a Heartless. Also thought Vivi was a girl for a very long time, just from the name, and then a little bit from the voice. Vivi is voice acted in Kingdom Hearts 2, and a very, very interesting portrayal of Vivi. Not necessarily the most accurate portrayal, but also not, like, there's just not much to it. There's not much to read into about Vivi. It's very much a cameo, but, like, it's a weird cameo. Another character who is featured very prominently at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts is actually Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII. What did Kingdom Hearts make me think of Yuffie? I expected Yuffie to be this extremely, extremely important character because of her role in Kingdom Hearts. She has all of this knowledge. She is extremely charismatic. She's spunky. She's a ninja. She introduces herself as the great ninja Yuffie. She just seems like this huge character, huge personality.
I think you might have overdone
She teaches Sora along with Leon.
That's Leon.
We'll get to him. She teaches Sora along with Leon about the Heartless, about the Keyblade. She has so much knowledge of this world in Kingdom Hearts that, to me, she must be the main character in whatever game she's in. So I look up what game she's in. Final Fantasy VII. Oh, so Yuffie's the main character. Well, no, I know Cloud's the main character. Yuffie must be the main girl character then, the female lead in Final Fantasy VII. No way could she be an optional, missable character. She runs the whole show. I'm sure of it. Thanks, Kingdom Hearts. So, Final Fantasy X comes out before Kingdom Hearts and is featured in the very first game. They are the first characters you meet. The Final Fantasy X characters in Kingdom Hearts are the first Final Fantasy characters that you meet. Sora runs into them in his hometown. They are in Sora's home island. They're right there. They're ready to teach us how to fight. And they're babies. They're all babies. Everyone in Final Fantasy X is like 10 years old, and I have no idea why, but I remember at the time looking this up, considering playing Final Fantasy X at the time. Didn't actually do it. Really wish I had. It's a great game. But I looked up Final Fantasy X, realized the characters are so much older than how they seem in Kingdom Hearts, and I'm thinking, is Kingdom Hearts a prequel to Final Fantasy X? Like, did this happen when they're younger and then Final Fantasy X happens? But no, if you've played Final Fantasy X, that makes no sense either. It's an alternate universe, all the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts. They're just, you shouldn't read too much into it. It's just for fun. But as a kid, I was reading into everything. And I was so confused why they were babies. Every single character from Final Fantasy X. Oh, hi, Dexter. Dexter's here. Soaking up the sun. But every single character from Final Fantasy X in Kingdom Hearts is a baby. Except for the Gullwings in Kingdom Hearts 2. I mean, they do seem like totally full-grown adults, except the fact that they are tiny. And fairies? They fly?
What's Leon's gang up to?
Why?
Stuff to do
Who
over by
are
the
these
castle
little
Scoop!
Gullwings?
Huh?
Who are they? Oh, bizarre. And like on that subject,
Yeah,
totally thinking these characters are extremely important to Final Fantasy X. And yes, two of them
Don't
are.
mind her.
You know,
I
Pain's
assure
from
you,
10 too, though.
come in
Not in
peace.
10 at all. A totally
You're
separate
kidding.
story, but
Problem?
you know,
Okay,
somewhat
fine.
significantly
You do the
featured in Kingdom
talking.
Hearts 2. And so many
So
other Final
sorry
Fantasy
about
characters are skipped, but you bring in Pain? Now, don't get me wrong, I do love Pain. I think Pain's fantastic. But it's just so wild to me. Some of the choices they make, like Final Fantasy IX has like very little representation in Kingdom Hearts. You only get Vivi. Final Fantasy VI only has one character. Seven's got quite a few. Final Fantasy VIII? Ooh, we gotta talk about Leon now. After playing Kingdom Hearts, I realized Final Fantasy VIII only has one character, and that's Leon. Squall? What do you mean his name's Squall? Why would they change his name to Leon? This makes no sense. And yeah, after playing Final Fantasy VIII, I realize Squall is the only character that gets any real character development or attention. So maybe that's why he's the only one to be brought over. Thanks, Kingdom Hearts. We meet quite a lot of Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts. Now, we don't meet Tifa until Kingdom Hearts 2. I didn't know who Tifa was until I met her in Kingdom Hearts 2. She has since become one of my favorite characters of all time, but at the time, no idea who she was. I actually thought she was evil. She bursts into Hollow Bastion looking for Cloud, and I think she's like hunting him down. She's like kicking walls, looking for mysterious openings. It seems to me like Cloud is hiding from her. So I went into Final Fantasy VII thinking Tifa was evil. Now I have to talk about the relationship between Cloud and Sephiroth. I thought after playing Kingdom Hearts, after playing Kingdom Hearts 2, they had the most intriguing relationship ever. I was dying to find out how these two were related, what it means, why they have to face each other, what's going on. I was convinced that they were two beings. This is Kingdom Hearts logic for you. I was so convinced that they were two beings that were only one of them could exist. So I thought, you know, only one can live while the other survives type of thing. I was thinking they're like basically they're one person that's been split into two. I thought Cloud was, I had heard this like clone terminology. So I was thinking Cloud was like a literal clone of Sephiroth, but for some reason looked like a total different person. But I was very confused. I thought they were basically like light and darkness of the same person, and that's why they ended up looking different, but needed to merge to become one whole person. Thanks, Kingdom Hearts. All right, this next one is a really big one, and it actually applies to much more than Final Fantasy. It applies to RPGs as a whole. What Kingdom Hearts taught me about RPGs is to forget the small fry and to find the boss. Do not worry about any little random encounters. Do not worry about grinding, leveling up. You'll be fine. Just run straight to the boss. That's all that matters. It took me years to unlearn that. That's what Leon tells me at the start of my very first RPG. Basically, the very beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1, you meet Leon, he tells you, don't worry about the small fry, just forget them, run past them. I'm thinking this is a lesson in running away, in dodging, in maneuvering around stuff, trying not to let people notice me, being all stealthy. That's what I think this game is about. Running and not getting caught and not fighting things you don't have to fight. Not killing things you don't have to kill. That's what I think the lesson here is. But no, you should kill everything because that gives you experience. That way you're not level 20 at the final boss of every single Final Fantasy game you ever play. Thanks, Kingdom Hearts. Well, that's most of my assumptions that I had about Final Fantasy games before I ever actually played them, and what I learned about them from the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm sure that there are more. I'm sure there are tons more inconsistencies between Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Well, specifically with the representation of Final Fantasy in Kingdom Hearts. At the time, I could not accept that it wasn't canon, that the Final Fantasy stuff happening within Kingdom Hearts was not canon. As I've grown up and as I've played the Final Fantasy games, it's much more obvious to me now. But it is fun to look back and poke fun at my little, like, 12-year-old brain playing Kingdom Hearts for the first time and meeting these characters who are legitimately, for the most part, except Aerith, really, really cool in Kingdom Hearts. They come across as so cool, and I really wanted to get to know them, except Aerith. But I'm very glad that I did eventually play the Final Fantasy games, and I know for myself now how cool they are and how much cooler they are in Final Fantasy than they were in Kingdom Hearts. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a blast making this video, honestly. I love sitting down and chatting about video games. I haven't had time to do this as much lately because I've been trying to, keep up with putting my full playthroughs on YouTube, and that takes up all the time that I would normally have for chatty videos like this. So since I'm kind of in between games right now, getting games up on YouTube, I thought I would take some time to do this. And this has been really fun. I want to get back to doing more of these little, like, shorter videos, but that are just a little bit more, like, just talking about games in general, not just sitting down and playing something for hours at a time. Because these are really fun to do too. I'm currently playing Chrono Trigger over on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday. At the time this video goes up, I'm probably around halfway through my playthrough. It's the first playthrough. Really loving the game so far, but if you want to catch the rest of it, the VODs are all still up there. You can see them there. They'll be coming over to YouTube eventually, but it's a little bit of a slower process to get them up to YouTube. If you want to catch me live, I'm Mandersnatch over at Twitch. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Central. Would love to have you come over and say hi. Always the best feeling when people from YouTube come over and say hey in the chat. It's a really, truly wonderful feeling. Thank you to everyone who has done so. It's always so good to hear from you. If you liked the video, please give it a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to me. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye, everyone.